Hello everyone, welcome back to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. It is me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my sidekick, Austin the Day Ghost. Tonight, voted on by Patreon, we're going to be tackling the 2005 Fantastic Four movie, the first of two Tim Story Fantastic Fours. Austin, tell everybody why this was on the list.
So we did a list of movies that were correlating to different new announcements at the time. And of course we had the Fantastic Four news, so I put that on there and it won. Also, I didn't have this thought.
This was Austin's idea and he's so excited that it won.
I am. I love this movie. No, so I had this thought today that I never realized, because this whole time I've been like, man, you know, what a shame they didn't manage to get Fantastic Four out in 2024, because it's Fantastic Four. And then I realized, wait a minute,
they didn't even get this out for 04.
And then they didn't get it out in 2014. Like, they come out in 10s.
No, and you know what the big... Yeah, I guess I never put together that all of them are going to have that. But
yeah,
but
I gotta look up the
irony
date
is,
on the Corman movie, because if it's 95,
no, it was 94. That's the irony of it.
No, but it was made in 94, so maybe it would have come out in 95.
It might have released in 95. That's a good point. Because yeah, I always see the date, the year 94 associated with that movie, but it didn't get released. So you're right, it might have been 95. And the later that movie comes out, the wilder, that's not what we're talking about tonight, but the wilder that is, because that already feels like a movie that was made in 1983.
Exactly.
But I guess there's a tradition of that also with the Fantastic Four movies, Austin, because this also, especially compared to other superhero movies of the year, feels like a movie that's already kind of dated. And at least in my mind, and should have come out, 3, 4, 5 years earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely forgot until somebody said it in the chat that this is the same year as Begins.
Yeah, I mean it's night and day. It's just wild to imagine that those two things come out the same year. And there's another one too that
This Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man
2 is the year before.
That's the year before. I feel like there's something else in 05 where it's kind of nuts. Is Sin City that year?
Maybe.
Constantine is that year.
So it's just like a DC / independent year, I guess.
Yeah.
Plus Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and a decent year for superhero movies, with the exception of this one, unless you're Austin, because Austin loves this movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, thank you, Jabakis Lover. And the worst comic book film, objectively, Man-Thing.
Man-Thing, don't forget about that.
Yep. I try my hardest.
Well, as we always do on this show, we're going to watch the movie. We have both prepared for this, so we've watched it recently. This is not, of course, a blind commentary. It's the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. Austin and I are going to chat about the movie as we watch it with you, and we hope you'll interact with us a little bit. If you're watching this live right now, feel free to leave a super chat in any dollar amount. That guarantees that your opinion is heard, but we will also chat with folks as much as possible in the comments when they bring up stuff that is interesting and relevant, and we always learn things doing this stuff we didn't know about this, even with the sheer number of times I've talked about this movie. This will now be my third commentary on this, I think. At least.
Yes, because I had a joke that I was going to do coming into this, and I forgot about it until you said that. You're right. Rats.
I guess the thing I gotta say about the new Fantastic Four movie is hopefully fourth time is the charm.
Yeah, fourth to actually be released, fifth maybe.
Yeah, we'll but if you count the unreleased
franchise,
movie, it will. If you count the unreleased movie, it will be the fourth iteration.
That is true.
Because only one of these got a sequel, and unfortunately, it was this.
Yep.
Because as not great as, and as kind of awful as Fan Four Stick is, it would have been a more interesting movie to make a sequel to, and had, I think, maybe a better cast overall.
Yes. Question mark?
There's still, there's some odd choices with it. I think their Sue Storm is legitimately a good choice for a young Sue Storm.
Kate Mara, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great choice.
Everybody wants Miles Teller to be the Maker now.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that kind of, crazy, like recasting and what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of legacy casting stuff, stunt casting. But
well, I think for that, I think there's a lot of people that didn't think he was right for Reed, but think he's right for like an evil Reed. So it's both a legacy thing, and also people think he'd just be able to play it better.
Yeah,
it's like a little bit of both.
I kind of see that. I don't think I'm immediately against it. And then Michael B. Jordan might have been all right with better material. I don't know.
It's hard to say. I feel like Johnny should be cast younger, but that's
okay,
just me.
Sure. Do you feel that way about this?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know you're not a big fan of the casting with any of these characters, and we'll talk about that as we get into it. But I always liked Chris Evans in this role, but I totally understand that criticism that maybe cast younger.
Yeah, no, I think he would be fine if they cast younger. It's the fact that I know he's probably like 24 at this point, but he looks older than that. Like, he feels like he's like 28 to 30, and he feels way too old for that role to me.
Well, and
for like that kind of the gags they're doing with him.
Fair enough. It being we'll get into the movie here in a second. It being like origin and pre-marriage and all of that. Yeah, I mean, I always imagine Johnny Storm as being a teenager initially in the first place, and then you watch him get a little bit older.
At least the college age.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm getting to a place where my favorite version of that character is maybe Ultimate, and he's a teenager in that.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Because he goes to high school, I think, with maybe not with
Peter
Parker, but like a high school at the same time. I think I'm pretty sure he's in that group.
I think there is a point where he comes in and he's in high school at Peter's school, if I remember right. It's been so long, but he at least comes in for a bit, if not.
That's what I thought I remembered.
For a while.
Some folks in the comments are asking us about how we feel about Chickless and kind of surprised if we don't like that. Let's save that. Let's get into that when we get into the movie, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Austin, just real briefly, what is your history with this? Did you like this movie growing up? You would have been younger, of course, when it came out. You would have been a kid when this came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I remember being, a kid when this was out, and I'd go to different people's houses or whatever, and we were kids, so it was like, oh, let's watch a superhero movie, and it's like, oh, which one? And the only two I was adamantly, I don't ever want to watch. Anytime anybody brought it up was Fantastic Four and Hulk, because they were both incredibly boring, and I hated both of them. And I think I've told the story.
And came out within 2 years of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a great history with early Marvel then.
But that's the thing, though, is I liked X-Men, I liked Daredevil, I liked Spider-Man. Like, I
How
was
did you
down to
feel
watch
about
all
How did you
those.
feel about Ghost Rider as a kid?
I loved Ghost
Did
Rider
you
as a
really?
kid. Yeah, that was like that's maybe the first DVD I ever got, or one of them.
So you've got no nostalgic love for this.
No,
Like
none
you didn't
whatsoever.
like this even at 9, 10 years old.
No, no. And then I think I've told the story before, but my dad put on Fantastic Four too because he was a big Fantastic Four guy, and he's like, "Oh, they made a second one. Let's watch it." And then he walked out of the room when it started, and left me to watch it, even though I hated the first movie, and then also hated the second one.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it. This movie has two different cuts. I've still got the old DVDs. I've got to replace at least the theatrical version at some point with a Blu-ray. I don't know if the extended cut ever came out that way.
I
We
don't
are
know. Yeah, I'm just watching on Disney Plus.
That's how I'm going to watch it tonight too. And I was going to say we are going to watch just the theatrical cut. There's a little bit added back into the extended. I'll mention some of the deleted scenes and the stuff that comes back in the extended cut briefly, just as we discuss the movie. But it's not a Daredevil director's cut situation. We're going to make that call with each of these independently whenever there is a different potential choice. Whenever I was doing scripted rewind, I always watched multiple versions and would talk about them. And sometimes I would do a whole review if a cut was different enough, like the Donner cut or something. But with things like this, when you only add like 10 minutes back in, and there's not a lot changed otherwise, especially in a movie like this where the story's not any different really. I don't feel like there's any reason to try to make everybody get their hands on it, especially a thing like this that's maybe not the easiest to grab at short notice. So we're just gonna watch the theatrical cut, but I'll bring this up briefly as we go.
Yeah, the only deleted scene I know about is the Jackman cameo that looks really bad.
Well, and I'm sure that wouldn't have been the finished product, but it's a really
No,
dumb
of
idea,
course.
and we'll talk about that. Yeah, but the extended cut does a thing with Johnny Storm and Doctor Doom, and there's a couple of other. It's mostly stuff with Doom. He got some
That's what I've
stuff cut
heard is
out,
they cut a lot of Doom stuff.
and stuff with Ben Grimm's girlfriend, unless that's just
Alicia.
deleted Alicia, unless that's just deleted scenes and they didn't come back in this cut because I haven't seen that cut in a long time. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
I did watch deleted scenes, but I didn't watch that whole cut. So I watched all those scenes, but I didn't watch them in sequence. So I don't remember what's in it and what's not. Tom,
Yeah,
$2 super chat says I played the crap out of the GameCube game of this. I've never played that. I think I have a copy,
I
but I've never
actually
played that.
played a lot of the GBA game at the
Oh,
time.
really? I didn't know
Mhm.
that. I didn't know that came out.
Yeah, that was like a side scroller. Like a lot of them were like the Begins one is too. I
Okay,
played that a lot too.
when we first started this new format, my idea was not to have long preambles, but here we are, 12 minutes in, so we're going to go ahead and get in. In my defense, we're going to pad this out a little bit because this is a pretty short movie. We're going to reveal, as we usually do, the movie for next time right at the end of the show, but look forward to that because we don't know what it is yet either. Ooh, we took nominations from Patreon this time and we put them all on a wheel, and we're not going to spin that wheel until the very end. And we're going to have, I think, 8 or 9 things to pick from that are going to be on that wheel, and most of it's stuff that Austin's never seen.
hmm Yeah, there's like 2 things on it that I've seen.
And actually,
So,
quite a bit of it's stuff I've never seen too. It got pretty obscure, a lot of it.
mhm. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see what comes up. That might be a way for something to get watched that wouldn't have for years or never. So what
Yeah,
am I saying?
exactly.
Never. No, this project will get finished. We will watch every single superhero film ever made if it means that we're in our 80s or we have to cheat in some way. Anyway, let's do it. Here we go. Everybody, get ready to press play when I say now. I'm just about to do that. Rig up your DVD, Blu-ray, Disney Plus, however you're going to watch it. Timestamp 0. Here we go. Everybody, please press play right. Oh, I'm sorry. One second. I gotta
Oh.
change. Hang on. Sorry, I gotta change my audio here.
Ah, ah.
I remembered it this time. Everybody, please press play right now. Okay, Austin, I'm gonna
So
put you
do
on.
you? Oh,
I'm gonna put you on the spot right away. Are you ready?
okay.
Here's my question on the spot right away.
Yeah.
You don't like this movie. Name something that you think this movie does well. Go.
It's short.
That's a cop-out. That's too much of a cop-out.
Well, I have a question for you before I answer this.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
You think the F should have lingered at the end of the Fox logo?
Yeah, that would have been cool. I always liked that. I always liked that with X-Men.
Well, especially for this, it could have meant many things, like failure or effing delusional.
Fraud.
But a thing that I think this film does well,
is it like that? You don't like anything in this movie?
it's hard because I really don't like this movie. So It's like, what? I like their casting of Alicia. I wish she had more to do. So that's like a backhanded one.
Yeah, well, that's okay if that's all you can think of.
That's all that's coming to mind offhand.
It's hard for me to even go to score because I love Ottman with X2, but I feel like this score
is so generic.
Is kind of generic. In some places, it's too cheeseball. I mean, he's writing to the movie they made. It almost feels like Ottman realizes this is cheesier even than the director does. Because I feel like, unless they're just putting on a real brave face in press tours and stuff, and like that happens, obviously, it seems like the cast, looking at special features with this again, it feels like the cast and Tim Story, the director at the time, all thought they made something a lot smarter than what they actually made. And I think some of them at least buy into that.
Interesting. I just had a thought of praise I will give this movie, and it's to both of them. To be fair, some of the best Stan Lee cameos, I think.
Okay. Fair enough. There is a immediate kind of TV show quality to this.
100%.
And I think it was like that even back then. And it's going to be hard not to keep throwing out that caveat of, does it hold up or not? Like, am I saying this in hindsight, like almost 20 years later? This should be the anniversary year for this, but it's not. It came out in 2005, so that's next year. But I think a lot of the criticisms I lob at this now are stronger for me than they were when I did the rewind and would have been when this came out, but are still many of them issues I have with it going all the way back. This is a pretty expensive movie for the time. It was pretty state of the art for the time. I'm not going to quibble too hard about some of the special effects. A lot of it doesn't look the best. But like a lot of that's just it doesn't hold up real well. Like I think people were kind of okay with some of the effects at the time, and there were some of them, some of the stuff, especially like with the Cosmic Storm, that I can't help but laugh at now. But I'm much more bothered by like writing choices and just how generic the whole thing comes together. It doesn't feel like there's really a take here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I also feel like it's a movie that's missing acts.
It's like missing most of its acts.
Mm-hmm.
This movie has one act, and then it cuts to the last 10 minutes of a Fantastic Four movie. Or at least a Fantastic Four pilot. Because it has, like I said, it's kind of TV show, and especially in the writing, it ultimately kind of degenerates into a sitcom. And I think even that, Austin, could have been done better. Like, if this if the pitch was the Fantastic Four get their powers and now they're just, and that's what I've always said about this movie, is that the plot is they get their powers and they deal with having powers. If it was kind of a comedy that was about that and you put all the superhero stuff in the background, even for a big budget movie, I think that could be handled better than it is, whether that's what I want or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not even fully against doing a Fantastic Four origin film. I know a lot of people have it's not a story, and it's not, but like you could make one out of it.
I agree. I don't immediately get excited about that. I want to jump ahead. That's always been my thing with Fantastic Four, and I know you and I don't feel the same way about it, but like I always want to start, and some of this is just what I grew up with versus what I haven't read or haven't read in a long time, but like I want to jump into Fantastic Four like after they're married and they're very established and the world knows who they are. I'm not really interested in seeing all of that happen.
True,
but that's just a personal taste thing before it's anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you could do a really cool commentary on like celebrity culture in terms of like them coming back and now they're in the public eye.
Oh, absolutely. And this thinks it's doing some of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very superficial about it, and it's just not really about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the biggest issue. Most of my time rewatching this, Cap, was going, okay, how do I fix this? Like, and a lot of it was like adding characters and plot because there's nothing.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's difficult to criticize because, well, I mean, it's easy to criticize, but what I mean is, it's hard to take it on its own terms and say how it could be more effective about what it wants to accomplish, because it is unabashedly, and I'm not, um, I'm not praising it for that. Basically saying this is a setup film. We don't really have to do anything but establish characters. It has that in common with the first X-Men movie, but it has like characters that are less one note and are more interesting initially and inherently, and it still has
More
a plot
memorable
as
overall, yeah.
yeah, it still has a story as simple as it is. I mean, like I feel weird complaining about a thing just having characters and not plot. Like I'm not a quote unquote plot guy, but a story is characters plus plot. You do need that unless it's just a slice of life thing. But this isn't really that. It's just gags. So, like, could you make? I mean, you'd never do this in the mainstream, Austin. But
It's
could
like
you
an
make a
hour and
slice of
40-minute
life Fantastic Four
montage.
movie? Like, yeah, you kind of could.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so.
There's just no dramatic weight to anything that we see here, and it gets very gimmicky. It's bizarre listening to the actor commentary with this movie for lots and lots of reasons. And I went back and I did that. It has 3 of the 4. Chris Evans is not there, but it doesn't have Tim Story or anybody else that worked on this, so that's awkward. That it's an actor commentary for Fantastic Four, but only 3 of the 4 even showed up.
Oh, Johnny was busy. They should have gotten his love interest character, who is just credited as sexy nurse.
She gets a
To be
shocking
there.
amount of screen time for that credit.
I know, it's weird.
Well, everything about her is weird, and I want to talk about her when we get there. But one of the things that's bizarre about that commentary is they all just keep saying the opposite of what I'm seeing on the screen. And like, yeah, they're selling it, but again, I sometimes feel like they're in the kind of buying it, kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. And one of the things that, especially Chickless, but all 3 of those guys keep saying through it is just how careful they were to, and Tim's story was, to like retain. He said 2 things that made me laugh. They wanted to make sure to retain the humanity in it, and they wanted to make sure that it never degenerated into shtick. And I'm like, that's the movie. It's all shtick.
Yeah, that's absolutely all it is. Oh, this looks rough. Yeah, no, it's absolutely all shtick, and I think the biggest thing this movie lacks, and it's criminal for a Fantastic Four movie, is heart.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big difference between it and Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie, which it is cribbing from, ripping off, homaging, however you want to look at it, all over the place. I mean, it very much is, I think, trying to be in that mode and do what Sam Raimi did for Spider-Man for Fantastic Four, and it's very influenced in its way by X-Men too. I mean, by the first X-Men, mostly just in being an origin thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it's and I mean, like that movie is an origin for Wolverine coming into the team. I realize it's already established, but you know what I mean. Like that feels like a setup origin thing. But it's kind of screaming at us to feel like it has the same kind of heart and the same charm that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie has, and it doesn't really.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not. And I mean, obviously you have Raimi, and Spider-Man's easier with an origin because there's much more of a story there. But like that is more the movie. We're like almost at the end of their origin. We're like 10 minutes in. Like it's weird in that we rush their origin so quickly, and then we live in nothing for the rest of the movie until they all fight.
Yeah, and in all of that time, whether you do it before they get powers or after, you have plenty of real estate to develop characters, and we don't develop or progress anyone really it's all one note. Everybody's got a prevailing character trait. They all more or less have like and you want characters to have a clear motivation, but they have the kind of superficial thing they want, and it's not really layered. It's not very complex, and then we just kind of stall out for most of the movie. And like you said earlier, I find myself just like going to all kinds of different stories you could have told with your starting point. It's kind of like trying to critique a starting point as opposed to a movie. For instance, you take Doctor Doom, who this movie decides is going to get powers at the same time the Four Doom. They are not very quick to wonder if he got powers or not. That's the thing I always thought was weird. Like, the question is asked later, but you think right away they'd call him up and be like, "Hey, are you having any weird side effects of being out?
You're covered in scars. Do you have powers?"
Like, what happened to you? The clear place to take that, if that's going to be your angle, however you feel about that, is the angle. I never loved that.
But, I don't either, but like working with the framework of the film,
yeah, trying to make what they've decided to do more effective. What if the whole movie, like with X-Men, like with Xavier versus Magneto, it was Reed versus Von Doom, which it is. It's just superficial and dull, and there's not really like an ideological argument at play, right? What if each of them had a different vision for what the five of them should do with their powers for the world or for themselves? And Reed's is somewhat more altruistic, and Von Doom's is more self-serving, and Von Doom, for whatever reason, needs the whole team to accomplish whatever he's trying to accomplish. And he tries to make his own version of the Fantastic Four, and Reed tries to make his own version, and they're fighting the whole movie about which version it's going to be. And the whole movie, it's the Fantastic Five. You don't call it that, of course. And then at the end, it's finally the four when the other three side with Reed and they get rid of Von Doom. Like, that's your movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wish we did something with the Things arc with Alicia. Like, maybe you could include, I think it's the Puppet Master, the villain that she's related to, is like your second act thing. Like, not as necessarily the main villain of the movie.
Oh, is that why there's a deleted scene where she has puppets?
Yeah, that'd be why. Well, and we know now that Tim Story wanted to do him in 3, but like, I feel like if you did something like that in your second act, it would maybe bring home a little bit more why Ben is okay with being the Thing by the end, as well as giving the movie anything to do.
Yeah, because that does come too much out of nowhere. And what's frustrating is there are deleted scenes that theoretically should flesh more of that out, where they give certain characters more screen time and they give certain arcs more breathing room, but they still don't do anything with it. I would have all the same criticisms if everything was put back in. So
yeah,
you get the thing in the extended cut where Doom not only goes to the Thing and turns him against Reed, but he goes to Johnny Storm and tries to get him to make brand deals with him. And that's his big opportunity for change, where he finally decides to start acting more responsibly, where he's like, I've taken this too far. That's the one scene that I think, like, if it's added back in the movie, at least gives us some connective tissue and like, with his arc, and lets us see, none of this ages well.
you know what it is?
This is the most painful stuff, I think.
Star Trek the motion picture of it sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's the one, and then her face is just dreadful. She has no idea. Jessica Alba has no idea. Well, Jessica Alba doesn't know what's happening in this movie in general. But especially right there. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. There's so many things I want to complain about right now.
That's this movie. Like I said, I struggle to think of things I like in this movie.
How do you feel about the choice for each of the four, I guess 5 with Doom, to not realize they have powers until later? Because that seems like a very TV pilot thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I wish they just did the Lee Kirby thing where they land on Earth and then they get out and they have like the big, oh man, look what's happening to us moment.
Because you always like the body horror idea, which, to its credit, Fan Stick does.
To a degree, like I like that in their origin, yeah, but like I don't want to live in it.
No, I know, but Fan Stick doesn't do it the whole movie, but it starts with it, where it's like, oh god, we have these powers, this is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And then they
deal
that's
with maybe
it.
like a little farther than I want, but yeah, I guess more like
that's
that.
That's the better take, I think.
Mm-hmm. When a lot of this is just, I think, wasting time, which is this movie.
It is, yeah. Now, I will say, out of context, I mean, just like outside of anything, the gag there, because this is all we can talk about is gags. Where Johnny Storm pretends like you know, the thing is the thing, or that he looks horrible or something. Like, it's an okay gag, I guess. It's just there's too much of that throughout the whole movie.
And the way it plays, like it's way too obvious that that's just gonna be like it's a fake out joke.
You can tell what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and also they
played
cheat
too much.
They cheat with it because Chickless is already doing his Thing voice. You ever notice that? Where like he's doing the growly Thing voice, and he hasn't turned into the Thing yet, and he's gonna talk like normal Ben Grimm, like normal Chickless, and then when he turns into the Thing, he's got that voice again. You can't do that. Is this the scene where he breaks into his Latverian accent, or is that a little bit later?
I was looking for it, and I clearly missed the scene where it happened, even though I know that it happens. But I didn't catch it on this rewatch.
I will try to point it out, because I don't think we've gotten there yet, but it's hilarious. This is just the Defoe thing.
Yeah.
with the first Spider-Man movie, and it almost feels like it almost feels like they make him a corporate CEO, put him in that typical role just so that he can be Green Goblin again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he basically has the "Do you know how much I've sacrificed?" line when they throw him out. It's later, like it's kind of amazing that they had the gall to just rip that off.
No, it absolutely just feels like, well, what do superhero movies do? The CEO is the villain. Like, that's so many of these movies at this point.
Yeah, and you can't call it like anti-corporate social commentary or anything. It's just a trope now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not saying anything with it.
Yeah, well, there's this weird thing with the last two interpretations on film of Doctor Doom, where I think they think way too hard about trying to ground it in reality, and both of them end up being less realistic, I think, than the comics version.
Yeah, and a lot less interesting.
And a lot less interesting.
There's so much more you could do. Okay, I've got to complain about the girlfriend thing. The girl on the ski
sexy
slope.
Nurse.
Yeah, sexy nurse. It's hilarious.
Our favorite character.
Credited her. I missed that. So she and like she gives a fun performance with what little she has to work with, but
yeah, I like her fun.
Yeah, I do too. But she's not a person at all. Nothing she does makes any sense. So she's got a patient who she finds attractive, but has a temperature that should kill him. And then she decides to go skiing with that guy. Mm-hmm. Like that makes no sense. Like, he should be insanely sick and on his deathbed, and she's gonna go skiing with him. And then when she goes skiing with him and sees that he has powers, she doesn't flip out, like some other people in this movie that decide to just completely give up on a fiance without a conversation. She just gets in a man-made hot tub with the guy out in the freezing cold. She makes no sense.
It would be like if you had a Spider-Man movie with Flash Thompson, and the only scenes he was in it was like that scene in the first Raimi movie where he's got the web in the cafeteria, and when Peter bends the football thing in Amazing 1, and when he breaks the backboard in Amazing 1, like, just if it's like all of those moments condensed to one character.
And it's all of that to the nines.
Mm-hmm.
It's as far as you could possibly take that.
Yeah.
She's ready to jump into bed with a guy that could set her on fire, and at the very least is, looks like he should be so sick he's dead. Like, what if that guy's contagious?
Yeah, no kidding.
I also thought it was a weird choice for all of the Johnny Storm scenes to just be a Power Rangers movie.
Oh yeah, and I don't think any of the music fits Johnny Storm as a character. Like the Sum 41 here, and then some of the stuff we'll get later.
Yeah, and also just all the sports stuff where we stop everything to have these like long, sport stunt scenes. It's very 1995 Power Rangers. And with this specifically, snowboarding, jumping out of an airplane.
Also, he flew off this cliff, and she's just gonna ski down to him.
How long does that take? Yeah, I mean,
she was right behind him.
In her defense, from what I said earlier, I guess she didn't actually see him fly like that, but she does have to wonder why he was on fire.
Well, did she somehow miss that he was on fire and fell off a cliff to his death?
Well, she's the one who told him he was on fire, so she saw that part.
Yeah, we saw that part. I just mean all of it.
That's all she saw. And obviously, what I'm getting at is the movie doesn't think she has to be a person because it's all contrived to have just, like, fun, easy moments. And at the end of the day, it's the movie, and this is where this movie is a departure from, in a lesser piece than the first Spider-Man movie, is it's just like that movie has a few of the same problems, but the reason it works a lot better is because it doesn't feel like just a collection of scenes where we're not going anywhere. There's actually rising action in that movie, and this movie doesn't have that. And you could rearrange a lot of scenes, and I think they did.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Storm is just the cool guy.
Austin, this is the part.
Oh, okay.
But and I love how Bondvillain the line is, but first I have some unfinished business. And that's where he's doing that weird accent.
Well, and that was when I realized that his assistant was the actor from Midnight Mass, and that it made me really sad, because that guy's awesome, and he's completely wasted. And he'd probably be a better Doom than this guy.
Yeah, I had a thought this time that I had never had before, and tell me what you think about this. And I didn't find this in the little bit of research I did this week, so I don't know if this was a thought they had. But it feels like they went to this guy because they couldn't get Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, I remember you saying that to me the other day, and that's possible. I've never had that thought, but
I just over and over again on this viewing, I just kept seeing Kevin Spacey in his face and in his performance. He feels like low rent Kevin Spacey.
Which is funny because he would be Lex the next year.
That's right, the very next year. Boy, that's pretty crazy too. This movie feels older than it is to me. Like, compared to
some of that.
All the other things we're bringing up. And speaking of that, their take, if you can call it that, on Doom really is just a Lex Luthor thing. It's just kind of generic Lex Luthor.
That's it. It's Lex with lightning powers. And also metal body powers.
Yeah. It's
which is part of that, like, I think they're trying to make their Doom more realistic, because both movies do, like, both interpretations that have actually released do that.
Yeah,
and it's stupid.
Yeah, it is stupid. It also feels like, because Tim Story makes a really big deal out of how faithful to the source material and off the page this movie is, and a lot, some of the character dynamics and things you can see where he was pulling from, but like Doom is not that way. The power set is kind of taken from Ultimate, but even character-wise, I don't think he's Ultimate.
No, because Ultimate Doom's like the leader of a cult, I think, isn't he?
Oh, is he? I've never read that stuff. But I know he's not a corporate CEO guy.
Yeah, no, he's not. The big thing they take from Ultimate is the origin.
But I bring that up to say, it's odd that a movie like this that's taking and as I always say, it's not bad because it decided to go a different direction. It's lamer than going straight off the page in a lot of places. It's odd how much prerequisite it sometimes feels like you need to understand some of the choices that they're making and what's going on with this movie. Like, it's a throwaway line that he's from a place called Latveria. And when you get to the end and you get what looks like an after credit scene that's just tacked on to the very end of the movie, and when you have a reveal that he's going back to Latveria, that means nothing to an audience that is introduced to these characters through this movie. And then you end up with a who is this movie for kind of question with that, because the impatient fan base that actually likes the Fantastic Four in the first place knows what that means, but haven't gotten a Latvian-seeming Doctor Doom at all, and I have to just watch these characters like mess around with their powers for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So why even do that reveal? Who's it for? Because you didn't make a movie for that audience. You made a movie for people that you felt like you had to hold their hands for an hour and a half before you could tell a story about these characters.
And then they don't even do anything with Latveria in the next movie anyways.
No, it doesn't matter. In a couple of ways, it ends up feeling like a remake of their origin movie again.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways. It's not exactly that, but somehow it's worse than this movie.
I mean, that's not hard. I don't know.
I still marvel at the fact that I am more annoyed and angry about the second movie than I am this one. Because this is just an origin thing that sits around, and the second movie actually sort of has a story, and somehow I like it less.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, the second movie's way worse than this one. Somehow.
It's more insulting. Somehow the relationship stuff, which I haven't even gotten into yet, I've talked about this ad nauseum in other videos, but the relationship stuff with Reed and Sue is even more insufferable in that movie, which shouldn't be possible. This is just a Smallville episode.
Yep. That's pretty much all there is to it.
And that's my big issue with Spider-Man 2, is the ways in which the relationship stuff in that is just too much of that kind of forced, contrived relationship drama.
People worked on it.
Yeah, but they didn't this.
No, exactly. No, this movie doesn't have that excuse.
And this is worse about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are characters that are really not communicating, and with MJ and Peter Parker, they're established in a way in the first movie where I at least see why they're attracted to each other. I don't have that at all with this. All Susan Storm does is complain that Reed isn't exactly the way she wants him to be if she were to, mold him out of clay in the first place. So why does she go after him? She clearly doesn't like the guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I also don't know why they made any of these choices, like Sue and Reed having been, I know, right? Sue and Reed having been a former couple that aren't together anymore, that are gonna get married by the end of this movie.
Because that's what you do in a TV pilot, Austin.
But even then, they rush the Sam and Diane of it all.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, you got to have the unrequited love that they used to be they've got to be like Riker and Troy or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even that could work better than it does, but it's just one note. It's just spinning its wheels. It's gonna be hard for this commentary not to spin its wheels because that's all the movie does.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, especially as we keep going in the second act that never ends, and it's just a montage.
No, it's a first act that never ends.
Oh, sorry, you're right. No, it is just the first act. I forgot this movie has no second act.
It has no second act.
It barely has a third act.
So I learned something, or maybe I knew this and forgot that I had this discovery. This happens with me sometimes, where I haven't looked at a movie in so long.
Dead?
No, that she is that she is his fiance and not his wife. But
Yes.
that doesn't make it any better for me, or it doesn't make it much better. I still can't believe how superficial this relationship is. And it kind of throws Ben Grimm under the bus a little bit. Like, it's supposed to be really sad and tragic that she turns on him just because of his looks and that, you know, he's kind of become a monster. But I need to have some details about the relationship. I need to understand the dynamic they had.
It shouldn't be her first scene.
Before this, it shouldn't be her first scene. Yeah. Like, could you make me buy that? Yeah, maybe. But,
you could definitely make me buy this. He is a giant rock man.
Yeah, but do they? Because they don't me.
No, I'm saying they could make me buy it. They don't, because it's our first scene. Like, if we actually developed any of this, yes.
I don't like that they throw him or her under the bus the way they do. I mean, they don't let her say anything. Like, she just shows up twice, and first is freaked out, and the second time is like, nah, even though you just saved this whole bridge full of people, I can't be with you. You're a big scary rock man. What I'd love is a conversation where she actually listens to him for a while and still makes the same decision, but clearly feels really, really bad about it. And that plus any details about their relationship dynamic and, like, how long they've been together, and, like, because they lay it on too thick. Maybe we should have some sense that maybe they haven't been together all that long. Maybe they rushed the relationship. Maybe it's not going as well as we thought it was.
Engaged, I guess.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, that would be a lot better. I think it's a mistake to have somebody say, is it Reed, or somebody toward the beginning of the movie says, you know, you and Deb are perfect. Don't say that.
Well, I also think it's just an issue of, you have this where we're not saying anything and this woman doesn't like him because he's a rock monster, which is fair. And then we have, like, nothing in between. And then he finds Alicia, who's perfectly cool with that. Like, there's no discussion either way. Like, that's the arc.
Yeah, that's true. And even the Alicia thing reads superficial in this in a way it doesn't in the comics, because the idea that she is blind and can't see him and like comes to love him, you know, apart from his looks because she's not looking at him, that seems very superficial in this movie. It can be a lovely idea if we get some time with those characters.
Well, like I said, the main thing I wish this movie did was focus on that. Like, I feel like that should be the heart of this movie.
And again, she had scenes that were cut, but they don't really do a lot. I mean, to be fair,
it would have master stuff. Like,
it would have made their relationship. There's not really progression exactly, but it would have made the relationship stronger, and I would have bought them getting together at the end more, I guess, if those scenes had been left back in. But again, it just feels like kind of like soap opera or primetime drama stuff, where he comes into her into her store with her sculptures, and they play some like weird song or like weird modern pop song, and she's dusting him. Like, okay,
she's dusting him.
Yeah, that scene that they cut where she's dusting him.
Just the way you said that just sounded funny.
Have you seen it?
I haven't. No, I've seen the scene where Johnny was like dusting him to mess with him, but I've not seen that scene.
I will read super chats here in just a minute. So this is one of those like really almost obligatory kind of like over sexualization kind of scenes. I feel bad, even though I think she's horribly miscast in this, of course. I kind of feel bad for Jessica Alba with this movie, because they made her do this after she signed on for the project. It wasn't in the script, and she didn't know she was going to have to do it.
They brought it on like the day of, yeah.
The day of. And she felt kind of hoodwinked. She felt kind of forced into it. And in the commentary, you can tell how uncomfortable she is and how uncomfortable she was on the day. And she called it, not kidding, on the commentary, like gritting through her teeth and smiling. She says that was the worst day of my life. And I believe it. I believe it.
You know, I mean, kind of what you alluded to at the beginning of this. I think everyone's miscast in this movie. I don't blame any of the actors. Like a lot of it's just this material sucks. Like this movie does not get a single one of these characters.
So, like I said, people at the beginning were kind of surprised that you were saying that because they like Chickless. I also like Chickless. I think he is well cast, and I like
Chickless, I think, is the best of them.
And I like the grim voice that he does.
Fine.
That does kind of sound like what I would imagine.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think he's the best of them, but like I don't know, I just don't see the thing with him either. And part of it is he looks terrible. And that's not a I don't think it's aged well. I've always thought he looked awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's not a single point in this movie where I believe he's made of rocks. He's made of foam rubber. Like it looks really bad.
And I have this kind of disconnect thing where I think I just appreciate that it's done in prosthetic instead of CG at that time, because that would have looked worse, I think. And
I agree, and
B,
I'm definitely down with a prosthetic thing. Like that's not the issue. I just think it looks bad.
well, and I was just gonna say, and then the second thing is, it like the design of it, looks close enough to comics to me. Like at least he's big. At least it's not like the anorexic thing that the '94 movie had.
But they also like more genericified his face. Like we don't get like the brow or anything.
Yeah, I never minded that. And a lot of people at the time complained about that. They even talk about that in the special features. But for whatever reason, that was always kind of okay with me.
When a lot of it too is like every time he moves, you can see like the seams folding and stuff.
That's true.
Like, a lot of that takes me out.
There's a charm
And
to
I mean,
that
you're
stuff.
gonna have that obviously, but they just don't shoot it well.
Yeah.
Either.
I don't know. There can be a charm to that kind of stuff if only I like these characters in the
Oh, if
story
I
and
liked
stuff
this movie,
more.
yeah, I wouldn't care. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when nothing's working, like
Then that stuff jumps
no
out
fun.
at you more potentially. Yeah. Like I said, I think I was just at the time just so relieved that they didn't attempt this in CG.
No, that's fair.
And
just
it's one of
think it
those
could have been
things
done
that
better.
like you're accustomed to because you've seen it a lot. But yeah, that's a thing I've actually kind of always been more or less okay with. But
No, and I also think the thing is miscast in the Fantastic.
yeah,
So there's that.
yeah,
I like Chickless more than that guy.
I never liked
And
that
I like
casting
that
either.
actor. I
So
just don't think it's
what is it
right.
about Chickless that you don't think works? I'm just curious.
I don't even know, like entirely offhand. It's just I just don't see the thing with him. Like none of I don't think I just don't see Ben Grimm. Like it's just I just can't see that character.
The thing I don't like about, and I don't know if I'm complaining about his performance or just what's on the page or both, but I feel like he turns into kind of a different character when he's in the costume. Like when he becomes the rock monster, he starts the way he speaks and the words he's using are different.
We're starting to throw in some of those thingisms.
Yeah,
from the
like
comics.
why is that? Why does the Rock dumb him down? He should already be talking like that. That's what I don't like about
the choice
it.
that he's like, I guess also like an engineer type thing working with Reed. I think he's already kind of more scientific.
Oh yeah, good call. Because in the comics he doesn't
He's
have
a
that
pilot,
role.
I think, isn't he?
He's just a pilot, I thought.
Which would have been cool because he's got the giant hands. He can't fly anymore.
Oh yeah.
But
no, he should be like he and Johnny should in different ways be like the less super intelligent of the four, obviously, and in the more kind of like street level, street wise kind of characters. and
Yeah,
should
absolutely.
maybe kind of bond over that. And I've said this a million times in other material, but like, I never bought Jessica Alba for 1 second as a scientist. Obviously, it's like, it's not just bad casting, it's like the worst possible casting. And again, it's not her fault. It's just, why? What possessed you? And I have liked her in things. She's not right for this role.
Mm-hmm.
And her acting in this movie is terrible.
Totem
She seems
pole of
lost.
badly miscast in this movie.
And she's right at the bottom of it.
See, I was going to say Doom is at the bottom of it, and then
sure.
And then
I thought we were just talking about the principal cast, but yes, I think you're right.
And then Reed.
Well, you know what? No, I don't agree with you. I think she's even more miscast than he is, because I think if they let him be closer to comic book Doom, he would give a better performance, but he's still not who I would pick, if that makes any sense.
Maybe? I don't know. He's got no gravitas, and he's Dr. Doom. Yeah, for me, it's Doom, her, Reed, Johnny, Thing, Alicia, Sexy Nurse. She's at the top of the podium.
I think it's sorry, we will definitely read super chats here in a second. I also think it's important to note that this is one of those movies that had too loose maybe of a script, and that they were changing constantly and on the day, and had lots and lots of reshoots. I read about this today. I didn't realize this. One of the reasons that so much of this gets changed at the 11th hour, apparently, and I don't know how much better it would have been before this, because you still have casting issues and, a lot of the problems we've already discussed. But Tim Story started making massive script changes when he saw Incredibles.
Oh, okay.
Because he was afraid that they were making a thing that was too close to that, and that makes me wonder if some of the substance was gutted.
Which is unfortunate, because obviously The Incredibles is kind of touted as the best Fantastic Four movie, but it's just like a piece of Fantastic Four as opposed to just all of it.
Yeah, I think people grossly exaggerate how Fantastic Four Incredibles is. Like, they're obviously looking at that material, and like, it's
the main thing is just like the family aspect, but like, you're missing the cosmic aspect.
No, you don't have that. The status quo is very Watchmen. Like, that movie is a blend of lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then obviously with the MCU, you have Guardians as their Fantastic Four, where it's adapting a lot of that stuff.
Dude, with that goofy shot where
the zoom
in thing where they bring his chair at you, I laughed out loud. I totally forgot about that moment.
That was rough.
That's amazing. Do you have any idea what he sacrificed?
Yeah, good movie.
Back to formula. Bag Studios.
Back to Latveria.
$1.99 super chat. He says, I'm scared. I haven't seen this movie in 13 years, but loved it as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I had lots of friends that really loved this movie, and I did not understand it as a kid. So
this
there were
guy,
people that really liked it.
The like bellhop guy at the Baxter Building. He is one of the Crypto Freak's parents in first season of Smallville, and is a character actor that shows up in a lot of stuff. He's actually the father of the kid played by Shawn Ashmore, played by the guy that plays Iceman.
Oh, okay.
And then here's our Stan Lee cameo. And Stan Lee had one line of dialogue and then came in and just improvised like 5 minutes of dialogue so that he could try to force himself to get more screen time. And it worked. He has a lot more screen time than he was supposed to.
That's awesome. No, I like that he gets to be, just a minor character from the comics.
Yeah, we don't.
And then
do
I
that
like in the sequel that he gets
very
to
often.
be. He gets his actual cameo from that issue of The Wedding.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I forgot about that. I was racking my brain trying to remember what the sequel one was.
Yeah, it's the one where he's trying to get into the wedding, and they're like, Stan Lee, like, who's that? Which is his cameo in the comic. Him and Kirby, I think.
Tell me if you agree with this, Austin. I feel like, in a way, and I don't mean to throw this under the bus, but I feel like, in a way, the approach for this movie is too Ninja Turtles.
In what way?
We have our four characters that each have a singular prevailing character trait, but otherwise might be kind of interchangeable, and we just have them throw like silly one-liners and just quibble about nothing in particular for a bunch of time, which is what the second and third Ninja Turtles movies do. And
Okay, yeah. This is
like
about on par with the third movie.
yeah, and various iterations of Ninja Turtles will have that problem.
Hmm. That reminds me, now that you say that, Cap, have you ever heard the theme to the 90s cartoon?
Not in a long time.
So they do the sum up each character with one line in the song. And I heard it for the first time today, and I was dying laughing.
Does Mr. Fantastic do machines?
No, it's Reed Richards is elastic. Sue can vanish out of sight. Johnny is the Human Torch. And the Thing likes to fight. Johnny's character is just that he is the Human Torch.
Just the name of his character? That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Let me read through these super chats. Beck Studios. Oh, sorry, we already got Bag. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. Thank you. He says, fun fact, Chris Columbus was supposed to direct this movie. Yes, I knew that. But
he also almost did Daredevil, too, I think.
We might have talked about that with Daredevil. I don't remember. He says, before Tim's story, he got fired for trying to make it more comic accurate. He's a major comics fan. All I read was the kind of typical generic, he couldn't see eye to eye with the studio thing, but it would not surprise me if that was the issue, or if it was, basically, Tim's story would play ball with some of the mandates, but try to make it as close to off the page as he could. I think that's probably what happened.
When Chris Columbus is another director that I think of as just kind of like a lacking in style workman director kind of guy. But he's definitely way cooler than Tim Story is.
He's a real competent workman director. I don't immediately go, oh man, this would have been so much better if he directed it, because there were probably studio mandates that he stuck with. But it might have been a better directed movie. I will say, we were obviously a great deal more positive on the 03 Daredevil movie when we did that a few months ago. And I think Mark Steven Johnson is probably technically a worse director than Tim Story, and yet I enjoy that movie more, and I like what it looks like more.
It's hard to say, because I think I would give it to Johnson, because Johnson might have a hard time putting what he wants to do on film, but he's got ideas. Tim Story's just boring. He doesn't attempt anything, and
That's
so he
true.
doesn't fail. But it's not interesting.
But I think there's some competency issues with some of that movie that I'm not seeing here, even though this isn't a real interesting looking movie.
Sure, but I also think some of that's kind of weeded out by Ghost Rider. I don't think that has some of the same competency issues that you had with Daredevil, even though I think Ghost Rider is both a better and a worse movie than Daredevil in different aspects.
You're right. You're right about that. No, I hadn't had that thought, because also we're comparing directors at different points in their careers. I think because Tim Story had done stuff before this.
Yeah, and Johnson's a first-time director on Daredevil, isn't he?
He was. Yeah.
And that's a way more what's the word I'm looking for? He was trying a lot more in Daredevil than he was with than Tim Story was with this movie.
You could see more passion in it.
Absolutely.
Credit.
I think Fantastic Four of the early 2000s Marvel stuff is one of the worst ones. It's only saved by the fact that it's the best Marvel movie of that year, because the only two movies worse than it came out in 2005, being Man-Thing and Elektra.
You know what though? Oh no, 04 is the first Punisher movie, isn't it? Or I guess second technically, but yeah.
Yes, Punisher's way better than this movie.
Credit where it's due, in my opinion, anyway. Sometimes there will be one-liners, and a lot of them, to be fair, were not written. They were things actors came up with on the day, because there's a lot of improvisation in this movie, and it definitely has some some Ghostbusters 2016. oddly,
Well, it's funny because we're also in a scene that's just Ghostbusters.
yeah, at least nobody's dancing.
Yeah, it's true.
But oddly, the majority of the made up lines on set come from Chris Evans, and I find that endlessly fascinating. That that will become the way we make Thor movies, and he was never wrapped up. And also that the MCU begins with a movie that is largely improvised with Iron Man. Chris Evans never falls into that. Nearly everything he does, probably, as far as I can tell, is scripted, is written for him on the page. But in this movie, the first time he plays a superhero, he's making up like 90% of his dialogue.
Mm-hmm. But Chris Evans has that like Keanu Reeves thing where like for like years he was just playing this role and then it switched and now he's just playing Captain America.
Yeah.
and Keanu Reeves had that with like Bill and Ted, and now like that kind of John Wick.
And I think the public had the same thing with him that we had with Keanu Reeves at the time, where it's like I don't even see him doing these serious roles, and now I look back on this and I'm like, oh yeah, he was a different guy back then.
Well, now it's like, oh, he really did it with Captain America, but everything else that gets him to do Captain America, he's so boring and.
Yeah. I liked him okay. I mean, I know this is a lot earlier. When we had to do on Request Snowpiercer, I liked him in that. I didn't love that movie, but I liked him in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I was very indifferent.
Let me read this super chat. Played out $20 super chat. Geekvolution is about rules. We know this. However, I'm requesting some of this go toward the upcoming Geekvolution movie, provided it's going to be better than this thing.
Well, Cap,
thanks. Played out.
This movie.
I will add that to specifically the fundraising pot for that movie. I appreciate you, man.
As someone who has read that script, I can tell you that there are acts in that movie.
Is that all you're gonna give me? It's just it's got a structure.
It's got a structure, yeah.
Thanks, man. That is, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, the nicest thing Austin has ever said to me.
Yeah, no, it's got a structure. Things happen.
Austin, I'm gonna put you on the spot again.
Okay, do it.
I would like you to please explain to me Dr. Doom's motivation. Go.
Well, he's evil, and he's rich, and he's turning into metal.
What does he want? It's just a revenge plot, right?
I think so, which I would be more okay with, but you need to make him and Reed more of the... I think the Thing and Alicia should be the heart of this movie, but Reed and Doom should be like the thoughtful, like, these are the ideas driving the movie.
Yeah, and that should be where the real conflict is. Like I said earlier, they should be the Xavier and Magneto.
Mm-hmm. No, I wish we had more scenes of the two of them, like,
and then everybody else is
things,
caught in a war between them,
discussing, and less scenes of Doom picking staples out of his head.
Well, and I think we have the same thing with Doom's character that we have with the Latveria thing, where there's lip service paid to what's supposed to be a major component of that character, which is he's got scars on his face, and he is all about image, and he's obsessed with what people see him as and how the public looks at him. But I never, from the movie, really, there's a disconnect. I never get the feeling that he wants to hide his face like he does in the comics, or like he's going a really scary different direction because I don't look like I did before. Like he's lost his place in his company.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of it has to do with the scars on his face? It feels like it's supposed to be about that, but is it really about that? And why doesn't he put the mask on earlier if that's what it's supposed to be? When he grabs the mask at the end, it's just, I've decided to be a supervillain now, I'm wearing a mask. It's not to hide his scars or anything.
You know what it should be? Is the movie should be this. It should be about the celebrity thing, and then Doom doesn't want to be a celebrity, and he gets the scar, and then maybe he starts wearing the mask in public, and then it like slowly becomes like, if you're gonna do what you're doing with this, that's also not really what I want from Doom, but like with what's here, it's something. But you could do something where like they come down and now they're all seen as celebrities, and Doom is like, "Hey, we shouldn't be out in the public eye," and the other four are like, "No, it's great. Like we should be doing good with what we're doing," you know?
Yeah, the problem with the origin thing is that a lot of Hollywood movies adapting source material like this, particularly with superhero stuff, feel like they've got to have a big, exciting reveal or money shot at the end that is okay. They haven't been the heroes the whole movie, and now they finally are those heroes. Here's an idea. How about you do the Spider-Man thing where you let your characters decide for themselves that they're going to be heroes,
Mhm.
and then the movie is the first adventure of their doing that, instead of the again, capital O, origin. They have to just mess around a whole movie, and then at the end, the big opportunity for change is, we never thought of this before, but I guess we could be heroes.
Mhm. Well,
Um,
that goes into what I was saying earlier, where I wish there was like another villain in this second act that could drive them towards that.
yeah, I want them to decide to be public superheroes, and Doom go, no, we shouldn't be heroes. We should be effectively taking over the world. I mean, I don't mean you have to make it a blatant, take over the world plot,
No,
but
but like we
just
can use our power to influence things.
yeah, we could save the world in the like take over and force it to be a better place kind of way, instead of just going out and helping people like the
But you can
Fantastic Four would
have,
want to do as a
that kind
superhero
of
team.
debate between Reed and Doom about how, they both want to use their power to move the world forward, and how Reed is doing it in this way while Doom is, doing it in a more power corrupting way.
Yeah, and if you want it to be a dysfunctional family, we're not
Mhm.
talking about this montage because there's nothing of
There's
substance in
nothing
this
to talk
montage.
about, yeah.
Yeah, and also it's not funny. None of it.
No.
It's not funny. Oh, I was going to say this earlier. There are a few one-liners and gags here and there that do feel like decent, throwbacks to the Stan Lee Kirby comics.
Mhm.
That they're like things that they would have in those comics, but they don't feel like part of a cohesive whole. So they just feel like moments or throwbacks. And that's again the difference between this and Raimi's Spider-Man, where
It's stuff like their fight outside of the NASCAR thing where like
yeah,
we took like 5 panels out of a comic and put it in this movie. Yeah, I agree with that. I also have a question for you about Doom Cab.
yeah.
Do you think you could have done this movie where he's not the main villain and we're slowly building him to be the villain of a second one, and that we're seeing his downfall in this movie?
What I would have loved would yes. What I would have loved would be for and I was this is kind of the point I was starting to make a second ago, and I'm glad you said that because I completely lost my train of thought. If they're supposed to be a dysfunctional family, let Reed and Doom be at loggerheads where they're on total opposite ends of an ideological spectrum and how they should handle their powers, right? What kind of quote unquote heroes they should be. Everybody else should be on a spectrum in the middle of that. You've got Johnny a little bit closer to Doctor Doom, where he's self-serving, but he doesn't want to control anyone or rule anything. He just wants to be famous, right? You've got Sue would be a little bit closer to Reed's side. The Thing doesn't even want to be the Things. He'd be right in the middle, just leave it all behind, right? You can see where all that would go. I would love for them to be, so to your question, a 5-man team that becomes a 4-man team at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be.
Kind of like your First Class.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a lot like First Class.
Mm-hmm.
Also, clearly Avi Arad and some of these guys wanted all of this to eventually be in a shared universe. And if Reed and you want to make sure that it wasn't just repeating what we did with X-Men, but if Reed and Doom were kind of an Xavier Magneto again, it would be a lot cooler when you eventually connected it up to X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And just tonally, it would feel like it fit better.
Yeah, sure. People are saying in the chat, Cap, you missed 2 super
I was
chats.
just about to get to
Oh,
them.
okay.
So Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. He says, always felt like this was trying to be the hipper, sexier version of the Raimi films. I agree with that. That tone, but with more of an edge, goes further with the sex jokes. I also, though, think part of that is just because a lot of the sex jokes come from Chris Evans and they weren't scripted and they just let him say whatever he wanted to say. So I don't know how much of that was intentional.
Well, I was gonna say, if that's the case, then this movie is the equivalent of the kid that goes, "Oh, I have a girlfriend and I've had sex. She goes to a different school."
I think a lot of what Evans is doing in this is some of the stuff that most dates it. Because I remember some of this being like more charming and funnier when I was younger, and none of it landed for me this time, or very little of it did.
No, and a lot of it for me is just him mugging. Like, it'll be like he'll say something that's not funny, and then you'll mug at the camera for a minute. Like that's we talked over it, but that's that moment where he's like, "Imagine this, but everywhere," and then he's just like behind them the entire scene, being like, and I'm like, "Yeah, it wasn't funny. I knocked my headphone out doing that."
Tom says Puppet Master is Alicia's dad and he's in the game. Tom, try in your super chats to give us context in case it's a little while before we get to your super chat because it took me a second.
Moleman's also in that game.
2 minutes.
He's a big part of that game.
Oh, is he really?
Oh yeah, that's some of the stuff I love about those old movie games. Is that we did a lot of that stuff. It's always fun.
You flesh it out more with some comic stuff that you're likely never to adapt.
Yeah, like the Raimi the first 2 Raimi movies, like the games are even connected. So like Shockers in both, and when he comes in 2, it's like like you caught me last time, but I'm back.
So that's really funny because the big Incredibles game was Rise of the Underminer.
Mm-hmm.
So it also sort of did that.
Yeah, that is true. I never played that. I think I played one of the Incredibles games, but I think it was the movie game.
So I don't know how I'm supposed to read looking at the 4 there. Like, did he know the 4 was on his costume before he put the costume on, or was he in on it?
Well, it's that he's in on it, and she's like, "Oh, like what did he do?" And Reed's like, "Oh, like I was part of making this happen."
Okay.
Like Reed was the one that probably put the 4 on.
Because there's a part of me that wants him that wanted him to not even know he had a 4 on his shirt that he was wearing.
Johnny was going around while they were sleeping, putting 4s on them.
It's kind of silly that when they first get the costumes, thing is like I wouldn't be caught dead in that, and then for no reason we're told he's wearing the pants in the last scene.
Also, do you think it's weird that Reed doesn't make the unstable molecule clothing for them?
Yeah,
because that comes from Sue and is technically owned by Doom.
Yeah,
I don't have like an issue with that. It's just a question. Like it's a weird change.
I don't feel like Reed gets to do enough science stuff, regardless of the fact that, you know, he was the one that took them to space, or that, you know, they came up with that with the whole research project in the first place, and he makes the, you know, machine to change thing back, but like you said, he doesn't feel like that character, and it doesn't feel like the.
No, he feels more everyman as opposed to like the kind of neurotic scientist.
Yeah, you articulated that a lot better than I was. Sorry, I'm distracted by all of the product placement because this movie.
Look, it's Flame Grills.
Is
get
one of
it?
Yeah, get it? This is, and now it's on fire. This is one of the most egregious examples of product placement, and always has been. We've had it worse since then. Mm-hmm. It also has, but not by a lot, and it also has that in common with, everybody say it with me, Ghostbusters 2016.
Well, in this scene, like, conceptually, is the scene that you do when they land and they realize they have powers.
Yeah, that's true. No, good call.
And, like, it's this late in the game.
Yeah,
so
and then
how little this movie has gone on.
And then you can go somewhere from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, this should be like the end of your first act.
So you think Johnny Storm needs to get over this and have that opportunity for change earlier?
I just think he's too old. Like he looks too old for like the kind of college kid stuff that he's doing.
Because his arc is the power responsibility thing, and he needs kind of a Spider-Man moment where he has a real wake-up call, and that moment is sort of supposed to be the like self-sacrifice move he makes at the end, or the potential self-sacrifice move, but luckily he's able to fly. But I feel like I almost said the story. It doesn't really have one, but I feel like it really needs to be like some moment where he makes a, maybe not like a Peter Parker level mistake, but something kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like, "Oh, I've been so worried about," or maybe flip it, and make it a more positive thing, where it's like, "I've been so worried about fame and fortune, but there's this like little girl that would have died if I wasn't here using my powers, and I saved her, and now I'm realizing what my calling should be." Like maybe something like that.
Yeah, that'd be better at least.
You know, sort of like what Spider-Man has in Amazing, when he's like trying to find and get revenge on the person that killed Uncle Ben, but then he saves a kid and realizes, oh, this is what I should be doing.
Mm-hmm. No, that'd probably fit better with this Johnny than I thought that did too.
And I've always loved that choice, but I think that would work really well for this. It's awkward that there are some scenes, sort of like Doom going in and out of an accent. It's awkward that there are some scenes where the floor shakes when thing is walking, and most of the time it doesn't, and that's because, like with the accent thing, we didn't talk about that, but this is an early scene they shot, and later on they decided that they weren't going that way, but they didn't reshoot the scene.
Oh, I figured it was just they had this one like shtick idea, so it's the only time it ever really happens. Kind of like how you have like the one elevator bit.
That's what I always thought it was too, but it isn't.
So they planned for it to just, this was how it would be.
Yeah, the floor was going to shake every time you walked in a room, and they went, we don't want to have to do that every time. Or maybe they just decided it was kind of it was kind of silly.
Yeah, it's not something you would want to happen every time he walks into a room.
I would think so too.
I feel like it's kind of weird that they didn't give her like the blind contacts. I don't know if you had that.
I didn't have that thought, but now that you say it,
I'm like, that's just a woman that can see.
Yeah, what of this actress can see?
I can see into her eyes.
But I completely agree with you on her being, really well cast, but like with everything else, we just don't do enough with her.
Yeah,
and her being into him feels more superficial than it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. No, and this has to be an early Kerry Washington role, I'm sure. So this is probably a case of they cast a really great actress, but they didn't know it yet.
Well, in the commentary, they make a big deal out of how exciting it was to get her. So I don't know what she had done before that, but they treated it like it was a big get. Speaking of that kind of thing, Chewbacca's Lover had a $5 super chat where he says, Chris Columbus wanted Thing to be CG so he could look like he does in the comics and be his proper size. Apparently, that was a major argument with the studio. And if that's the case, I imagine it was probably Chiklis's fault, because Chiklis says in behind-the-scenes stuff that he wasn't interested in a CG thing and wouldn't do it unless it was a suit. And they really wanted him. Mm-hmm. So if that's true, my guess is they were afraid Chiklis would walk if they went CG, so that's why they did the suit.
Oh, okay. Well, if it was Chris Columbus, I wonder if it would have looked like the troll from the first Harry Potter.
Yeah, and see, this is why I'm not minding the styrofoam.
I mean, hey, this is a post-Gollum world. You get the right guy to do it.
So there's another way you could go I do like the shot outside of the
Yeah, it turned
diner.
into Rivendell. I'm in Lord of the Rings now. It turned into Riverdale.
And apparently, I got this from that commentary too, but apparently all of this neon was just in. This is not a set. This is actually a location.
Oh, so one of the cooler shot ideas was just because
that was just there already. Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that sad? No, it looks cool, and I don't mean to have a backhanded compliment, but they didn't like that. It was just there.
Well, it is really lucky because it also is Doom colors, and it's like Doom coming in to be the devil on his shoulder.
Yeah, none of that was on purpose.
Fascinating.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. No, I wasn't even thinking about the green Austin. Like, oh boy, I'd love to read into that, but I can't because they didn't do that on purpose. But another
it was
way,
accidentally brilliant.
Another way you could have gone with Doom is, so like I said earlier, have Reed and Doom have like a real ideological conflict. They can't see eye to eye with what to do with powers, and then maybe earlier in the movie. And this contradicts the idea I had earlier where they would, kind of be a family for the first 2 acts and then break up in the third. But if you had him leave earlier and then the Fantastic Four are trying to become the Fantastic Four and get through their dysfunctional family, you then have Doom come to all 3 of the others and try to turn them against Reed for different reasons. And they start to do that. Like, that's not my idea. That's clearly his. They start to do that, but they don't go far enough with it. So the only one they really do is Ben, where Doom kind of puts the bug in his ear that like Sue and Reed are going on a date and that he's not working on the machine. And it's unreasonable.
They're canoodling instead of helping with his thing.
It's unreasonable for the Thing to expect him to spend every waking moment doing that, but whatever. But then we cut out the other 2 scenes that start to set up something like that for the other 2 characters. There's a scene, like I mentioned earlier, where he tries to come to Johnny Storm and get him to take brand deals. There's also a deleted scene with Susan Storm that's not really trying to turn her against Reed, but just trying to get on her good side and get her to keep working with him. But, like, if they'd taken that idea all the way to the 9s, it could be, like, the 2 opposing team leaders trying to get their playing pieces away from the other one. And it could have been a power struggle thing.
Okay. Well, I'm also a little confused by how their work setup is, because she was working with Doom and now she's working with them, and are they still working with Doom's money, but he got kicked out? But I guess not. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea how any of that works. I don't understand how they haven't foreclosed on this building yet.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
There's no way he'd still be allowed to have that.
But he can't lose the Baxter building, Cap. It's Fantastic Four.
I think it's kind of odd. And I mean, this is, of course, a classic Fantastic Four argument, I guess, that like Thing is the only one that is visibly different and can't fit in and has kind of the mutant problem, and really needs Reed to build him the machine. Like, that's all comic book. It's just kind of rushed and contrived and stuff here, but
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted by stretching.
Maybe one day we'll make it look good on film, Cap.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's pieces of this that are cool, but then a lot of it is kind of embarrassing.
Yep.
Again, they're trying some ambitious things that we just weren't really there yet at the time, and so I like that aspect of it. I don't want to be too hard on it about, but like it doesn't hold up. Like,
no, it is just kind of a thing they're stuck with.
Some of that I felt like was a little bit better at the time. but I mean, I wasn't like enthralled or, you know, really impressed with it either.
No, they do a better job, I think, with Sue and Johnny's powers with the effects.
Yeah, I
Although
absolutely
we did
agree.
talk over the like abysmal explanation of her powers. That she doesn't turn invisible, she simply bends light around her.
Which would be it making you
Invisibility.
invisible. That's what that means.
That's what killing you means.
I forget where I was going with all of that. The catchphrase stuff is like really irritating. So
At least
he,
they didn't give an origin for its clobbering time like the 2015 movie did. But they also gave an origin for Reed's hair, so one step forward, one step back.
yeah, and Reed's hair is weird because they can't light it. Like it,
Yeah.
sometimes it just disappears, and sometimes it's too prominent. Yeah, it looks awful. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, you guys are doing a lot of CG in the first place. Why couldn't you just enhance that in CG?
Hmm. I don't know.
So this is the conflict part, Austin. And we're already shockingly close to the end of where you'd think we'd be by now. Like, it feels like a movie that still hasn't really gotten started, and we're kind of on our way into the third act here.
Yeah, no, and this still feels like it's the first act.
Or what is supposed to be the third act. That's because it is!
Hmm.
But
Well, now we have the music from Green Goblin's origin scene.
oh, that's true. Reed should walk into the machine and go, "Oh, it's cold."
Yeah, which would be really funny because he's wearing a costume.
But you know, I said this is a Smallville episode. Another way in which it's Smallville is it's got to have really cute, if not explanations for things like, you know, foreshadowing lines. And we talked over all of them at the beginning. We didn't really get into that, but stuff like, you know, oh, Reed, you're stretching, and oh, I feel solid. And all that kind of stuff where the audience is supposed to be, yeah, it's winking to the audience, and we're supposed to be like, oh, it's so clever because they worked in the, you know, dialogue, the character traits and, you know, physical traits and stuff later. Well, we do that with the catchphrases, but some of it doesn't make any sense. Where you've got, like, it's clobbering time, it comes from an action figure. And so the Thing doesn't even come up with that himself. He's inspired by
That's
an
true.
action
I guess that
figure.
kind of is an origin for its clobbering
Yeah,
time.
of himself. So like he gets it from a figure of himself that he hated enough to destroy, but remembered that line and liked it enough to say it.
Well, when he walked away, he was like, haha, that was funny, though.
He goes, file it away. And then flame on later for no reason. He just says it because that's what he says in the comics. He doesn't have to say it to activate his power. Like, he just says it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I'll just say it now in case we don't get to it later. Thing, shortly after the first time we hear Flame On, says Flame On, kid. But he's never heard Johnny Storm say that.
It's inherent. They know the catchphrases, Cap.
They've read the comics.
Yeah, they've read the comics.
You see what I mean when I say that
Avengers Assemble.
in some ways it's like it's supplemental to the comics, where they just expect that you know this stuff, so it doesn't matter if it makes sense.
Well, yeah, and Chris Evans is the king of that, I guess, because we do it with Avengers Assemble, where we keep teasing him saying it for the longest time, but
and
like,
he never says it, and it doesn't mean anything to an audience that's not initiated.
but apparently it did, because when he finally said it, people clapped. So I guess.
No, only Europeans clapped because the first Avengers movie was called Avengers Assemble there.
Oh,
so they
okay.
were already familiar with that. Only Europeans clapped.
We should have done that where he's like, "Fwah," and then it cuts to black, and then in the second movie he would say it.
Robert, I don't agree with you. He says in the context of this movie, saying Flame On helps him control his powers. Does it?
In what way?
Maybe mentally, where it's like,
He's used his powers multiple times without that.
I know what Robert's saying, and I'm trying not to roll my eyes at it because he's giving the movie too much credit. What he's saying is, he hasn't been able to really control it. He's used his powers, but not intentionally a lot, or at least not where he can fly, right? And the moment where he finally is able to fly and control it is when he says that. So I think what Robert is suggesting is that there's like this mental thing where when he comes up with the catchphrase,
Oh, okay.
now he can make himself do it, and every time he says it after that, he can do it.
Yeah, that's dumb. We've already had a scene where he went like supernova in a canister.
Yeah, I don't know if they were thinking that when they wrote it, but even if that's what it's supposed to be, the reason I don't like it is because there's not any like impetus to get us there. Like it's just, I guess it's just a fight or flight thing in the moment where it's like, oh God, I'm gonna die. Oh, I don't know, flame on. Like that should, not that I want an origin for flame on exactly, but there should be like a
Go web go Shazam.
there should be something that gets him, you know, either the confidence or the know-how or the selflessness. And maybe that's what it's supposed to be, where it's like he can't make the power work until he's selfless about it, but I don't understand why that would be with what he does. I also don't understand why Sue needs to be angry to turn invisible. You know, it's like she's the Hulk. Like, what is that about?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and so much of that plays into the relationship stuff. Like, you have that moment where he's talking and he's like, well, you got angry on the bridge, so you turned invisible. And she turns invisible, and she's like, man, when am I going to happen to do that again?
Well, and see, I also think it's sad that she learned what gives her invisibility through the same thing that made the actress most angry making the movie.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything I think of as like a character trait for Sue Storm, it's being very angry. And like that's how she gets her powers, being grumpy.
And being angry about being looked at as a sex object. That's the first thing I think of when I think of Sue Storm.
It's not being like motherly or like, you know, the best Fantastic Four member. It's that. It's being a certain B word.
She says in some behind the scenes material that one of the big motivations for Sue Storm in this is that she lives in a man's world and feels invisible because no one pays attention to her. And I go, that's not in the movie.
Yeah.
That's not even alluded to in the movie. There's not even a gender thing with her besides Doom wants to marry her. Like
they're gonna do the Spider-Man upside down kiss. No, the closest to that is just Reed doesn't pay attention to her, and she wants that.
Yeah, but that's not because she lives in a man's world. That's because we go with the very stereotypical, you know, like male love interest thing of he won't commit to a relationship. He's not sensitive enough. He's not he's not paying attention to her over his work. And all of that is, by the way, reads really, really generic and doesn't come from a character place at all. I mean, in the comics, they're just both like really sensible, like logical scientists. So like, yeah, they fall in love and they're, you know, as sensitive as you have to be to do that, but they're kind of on the same page when it comes to like the sort of methodical scientific way they look at the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's how I've always seen that relate. They don't seem, I guess what I'm saying is Reed and Sue never felt like opposites attract to me. And this movie is trying to do that, and I don't think it works.
Absolutely. So now we're really informed by X-Men because we try to take the worst line in that movie and make it a thing.
Explain that.
Well, because we're doing the what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning thing, except we're making it like a callback. Because Doom's gonna say it here to Reed.
Yeah.
And then Reed's gonna say it to him later, and obviously it's not exactly that because it's more scientific. But like that's very clearly the inspiration for that line. There's no way it's not.
Yeah, I knew what it was, but I just wanted to make sure the audience knew what you were talking about.
Hmm.
That gun just looks like a big plastic toy.
It does. Yeah, he's got a big Nerf rocket launcher.
It's kind of amazing. Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. On Marvel Mania, you said that while this is a blockbuster stuff in 05, you could do it on CW Flash now. You say they have action scenes like this. I stand by that.
Oh, I don't agree with that. Like you mean like in terms of looking as good as this?
Yeah.
No way. The Flash looks way worse than this movie does.
I mean, I've seen more of that show than you have. I would argue that there are scenes that they did in that show that were ambitious on the level of this that look at least as good as this show.
Maybe, but like...
And I'll also say that Supergirl had stuff like that in the pilot.
Mm-hmm. Supergirl more so. That was also a more expensive network. The Flash looks awful through most of that show.
Okay, so I mean, we'll just have to agree to disagree. The Flash, I think, looks awful by like later. I think there's some stuff in first season that's pretty decent.
But that's the stuff I've seen, Cap. Like that's
why I'm saying agree to disagree. Cause...
Yeah, the season finale of The Flash looks genuinely embarrassing.
No, it got worse as it went along. But I thought. I remember saying it's been a while, but I mean, I remember some of the. So, I don't know why I'm having to defend myself with it. I remember some of the stuff in the first few episodes being decent, but I also don't think this movie looks that good. So, like,
well, I don't either. But...
I don't think it's that hard. But the point I was making back then, and I hate trying to go back and remember things I talked about a million years ago, going back to that. But if I said that, I still kind of stand by it because, like throw enough money at it. Maybe I have to go back and look at Flash. Whether I'm right about that show or not, I do think that TV can do this stuff now.
It depends. Streaming TV, yes, but like I don't know. I don't think that like cable TV stuff can yet.
Well, and also they're not going to get enough money because like less than 500,000 people are watching that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This does feel like the CW Fantastic Four in terms of just everything else, though.
Yeah, and
this is what the CW Doom would be.
Oh, it is, and in the way he gets his mask.
And he's wearing just a stupid coat. Like his suit sucks. It completely misses the point of his design.
Well, yeah. I mean, they haven't thought any of this through. It's just he's supposed to have a suit because he's a comic book villain, and all the way down to his. I remember in the theater. The line that bothered me the most was "Call me Doom," because I'm like, why? You've just it's so obligatory. It's like he knows he's in a superhero movie and he's the bad guy, and he's now put on his bad guy mask and named himself.
I've taken off my makeup and put on my mask. Call me Doom.
Robert's stumbling down on what I said. There are plenty of shows now that look way better than this movie. I think that's true, but
yeah, it depends what it is. Like I said,
which is really funny because you also have been complaining about the CG through a lot of this, and I've been not taking up for it, but like a little bit more positive on it than you.
And it still looks better than that stuff does. Reed is probably the closest thing to that.
Well, and we've still never really made like Elastic Guy look great.
Mm-hmm. That's why Marvel didn't even try with Kamala Khan.
Which was probably for the best, honestly.
Yeah. Maybe. That also feels like they just kind of... They wanted to make her more in line with Captain Marvel's powers.
Well, but I mean, to your TV point, like their TV effects have not been great.
Yeah.
And like I get that that's streaming, but the first thing they did with her was give her a TV show. So like, did you really want to see them do stretchy powers there?
I mean, I was gonna watch it anyways. So, but I know people who are a big fan of that material were mad because it misunderstands the point that
Oh,
her powers
and that's
have to her.
totally understandable. And maybe if you're not gonna do that, you're gonna change it too much. Just don't even do it.
Mm.
I don't have a dog in that fight because I still have never really read that stuff. But
I don't care about Miss Marvel. That's just what I've heard from people who are big fans of her. So all of this action is very generic.
it is.
Although him getting hit into the bus and then walking out the front door that's always a funny gag.
Well, and I just don't have any investment in these characters and what little argument they have, so you're just kind of waiting for it to end now. It's like, okay, like, we've been here and done this before, you're just fulfilling the formula now. And even at the time when we haven't had that many blockbuster superhero movies, it feels so been there, done that.
When I never understood, like, even as a kid, why they couldn't just beat Doctor Doom. Like, why does it have to be the Ghostbusters thing of don't cross the streams? Okay, Johnny, now cross the streams. It's the only way we can win. He's not that much more powerful than they are.
No, it's weird that they treat it like he's just impossible, like insanely hard to beat. It's like they think he's Magneto, actually.
It's like they think he's comic Doctor Doom, but they dumb down his abilities to the point where, like, no, they could easily take this guy out.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's outnumbered, and he has lightning, and he's kind of durable because he's got metal. But like, okay, you have a fire guy, and you have force fields, and I mean, and also, we can just use what happens in the movie as evidence for this. They beat him fairly easily.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing, is this fight lasts 2 seconds.
That's another thing on the behind-the-scenes features from the time on the discs that's really funny, where Chiklis makes a big deal out of just how long this fight is and like how spectacular and amazing it is, and he's like, it goes on and on and on, and I'm like, that's the opposite of what happens.
Yeah. I want this to be more like the fight from the end of the first Raimi movie, where it's a lot more just like visceral, as opposed to just, oh, cross the streams, Johnny. I know I said it was bad, but you got to do it now.
Well, it's homaging the big fight at the end of Superman 2 really hard, and like with the truck, and just like the location is real similar. The difference between that fight and this, besides the fact that it goes on a long time and it's in various parts of the city and there's a lot of movement, is that feels like there's people in danger and Superman's got to keep saving them, so and Zod doesn't care, so like there's stuff at stake, right? And the second thing is, this feels like a rehearsed stage show.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that Superman 2 fight's genuinely thrilling.
It's great. Yeah. It's still great. I mean, it holds up to and I'm even going to go as far as to say both versions of it.
Well, I've only seen the one version, so I still got to see the Donner cut.
Yeah, there's some differences in the Donner cut.
Oh, no, of course they're different, because you have all the extra power stuff.
Well, the extra power stuff, but also there's a big set piece that's different. One's got the Coke sign.
Okay.
And the other one doesn't.
I gotcha.
Makura, I guess we're fine with just burning Doom to death. Well, he's going to be like a statue man and get sent back to Latveria, and so it's fine. We didn't actually kill him.
You know what happens to a toad if it gets superheated and then cooled really quickly? That, I guess.
Yeah, with some of the direct homages or ripoffs, however you want to look at it, from X-Men, because that's a terrific point that I never thought about until you mentioned it off camera a couple weeks ago. There's that, and then Ottman's score, and some of the ways that Dr. Doom kind of reminds me of Magneto. Like there's a lot of different examples we've brought up. It feels like the Saturday morning cartoon version of movie X-Men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah,
and here's a
why does
question
Thing
for you,
have the
Cap.
pants? Why would he put those on? Why would he need them?
Here's a question for you, Cap. Is this salvageable off of this movie?
Could Silver Surfer have been great?
Could you have an X2 sequel to this that is like above and beyond?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I'm gonna say you could make it a great deal better than the actual sequel they did, but you need to bring in a different director and writing team, and it's gotta almost be a different kind of movie in the way that X2 was to X1, or even like a Winter Soldier or something.
What's the '90s Fantastic Four cartoon where like they completely change it between its first two seasons?
I think you're a little bit hard pressed with the cast you're stuck with, where you're never going to make me buy that Jessica Alba is a scientist, but if you give her better material to play, I might at least understand what you're doing on the page enough to ignore that you got the wrong person.
When I feel like if you gave her more of that kind of like motherly role that she has in the comics, I could maybe see it, as opposed to just like the straight up scientist aspect.
And again, it's so weird because she keeps talking about that in the commentary.
Yeah,
Like she acts like that's what it is.
that's probably because they were given like, this is what you're supposed to say on the press tour, so it was burned in.
Yeah, but I'll say she doesn't seem fake about it. Like, because she also is audibly frustrated about. I don't know. I had a lot of respect for her in that commentary because, like, she said stuff I didn't agree with, and I didn't understand how she came to. But then she would complain about just how much she was forced to like argue with Johnny Storm, and she's like, I don't know, like, I get that we're, like, she really criticized it. She's like, I get that we're a set of siblings that bicker a lot, but, like, it's all we do? Like, don't we like each other? Can't we have a couple of scenes where we like each other? Like, she's right about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then that becomes a question of, you know, like, I think everyone's kind of miscast, but how much of that is the actors and how much of that is the writing and the takes?
And I think that's especially true with Mr. Fantastic, because I think I could be made to buy him a lot more. Like, it wouldn't be my first choice or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's just a, competent actor, but nothing special. I've seen him in a couple of other things, and, like, I don't dislike him, but
Mm-hmm. Well, it becomes a thing, like,
I just feel like he gets roles just because he's got a cool accent.
Mm-hmm. Well, it becomes a thing, like, I heard for like over a decade about how the only issue with that Toad line is Halle Berry and she can't deliver it. When no, that line's just like
That's a dumb
objectively
line.
awful.
Yeah.
It does kind of make me wonder, if there is some of that here, where how much of it is Alba's fault and how much of it is just the writing is so bad. Where it's like every line is on the verge of that Toad line.
But I still, yeah, I'm somewhere in between. I hesitate because,
Well, like I said, I think everyone's miscast, so I don't know where I fall on that. But that's just a question.
Well, but what I was gonna say is, like, she's not just a straight up terrible actor, because I think she's fantastic in Sin City. So, like, I've seen her in stuff where she's good. So, like, she has talent. Like, she's not a horrible actress. At the same time, I struggle to see her delivering technobabble.
That's why you give that stuff to read.
Yeah. But, like, she still kind of has to
really
be a scientist.
Wants me to watch Fant Four Stick now. No, thank you.
Are there? Let me ask you this, because you've read early FF more recently than I have, and I just don't remember. Like,
well, this is like a year ago, but yeah.
How? But for me, it's been a lot longer than that. Is in the comics, like in the early comics, in the Stanley Kirby days, is she a scientist at all?
I can't remember like if they say that she's a scientist, but I think like a lot of early Sue Storm roles are kind of she's like the working or not
Just the
working,
typical den mother, like
the kind
she's
of
a
the kind of like housewife thing.
housewife. Yeah. Well,
This does not make
that
it
was
into
all of
episode.
Stanley's female characters.
Mm. But it's also, like I said, been a year, and I didn't read like a ton of that. Like I got to get back to it. I had to take a break because there was so much Namor.
Yeah, that's the reason I have a hard time getting excited about some of the early FF stuff. I'm just not a Namor guy.
When I can like Namor, I have like a limit on Namor.
Dan
It's like
says
I
John
just
Byrne makes her a scientist. Okay, so you could cast somebody like Jessica Alba and just go to the early days and not say she's a scientist in the first place. But
which makes sense because Byrne adds the Invisible Woman aspect.
yeah, but they did do that. So
Yep.
I think it's just jump around a little bit. I think it's kind of awkward how long it is. What the heck is this song?
I don't know.
think
Mine
it's
turned off because it was just like go watch Fan Four Stick.
go watch a better movie. Oh wait, Fan Four Stick. Okay.
Yeah. What did you think I said?
No, I was just making a joke. Where it's like, go
Oh.
watch a better movie. Well, even that I can't say is necessarily a better movie.
Oh wait, it was because you were like, wait, Fan Four Stick. So I thought you thought I said something else.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's
I
okay.
was trying to make a joke. I didn't deliver it very well.
I want to go watch the actual good one,
The 94.
Corman one. Yeah, the Corman movie is 100% the best Fantastic Four movie made to date.
Which is sad for a couple of reasons, because obviously it was made on a $1.95, and Doctor Doom never got to deliver his lines in ADR, so it's hard to even understand what he's saying, and all we have is like a copy of a copy of a copy.
Mm-hmm.
So like if only the Masters hadn't been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Avi Arad. Apparently Avi Arad destroyed the Masters.
Yep. Well, isn't Avi Arad also the person that was like, oh, the Man-Thing movie should go to theaters instead of the Sci-Fi channel? Or is it, maybe it's the other way around.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
I think it's the other way around. I think he was like, we can't release this in the theater. So maybe he's not as awful as I was about to say. Dan Schneider,
Well,
Charlie
just
Theron
remember,
would be a
though,
good
he's
choice
been
for
producing all of this Sony crap.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he produced the Bratz movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the background on my phone for the longest time was a picture of him with a Bratz t-shirt.
But I'm sorry, you were going to read a comment.
No, I was. He said Charlie Theron would have been a good Sue Storm, and I was agreeing.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Like I said, I like the Fan Forstic casting. And the casting for the new movie looks potentially spot on, so...
It's at least 50-50, if not 3/4 for me, so...
But I'm hoping the movie will just win us over on everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. That's me with Pedro Pascal. Like, I'm not, like, oh, I just don't see it. So it's like, they got to kind of win me over, but they could.
But,
And
like,
Vanessa
people keep
Kirby is
saying,
the best
he looks
choice.
cool in that drawing.
Yeah.
But
That drawing's awesome.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, with Sue Storm and Doctor Doom, it's odd that the movie waits as long as it does to confirm that Sue and Doom have not actually been an item and been sleeping together. That's odd, right? Like, I think it's a reveal, and they didn't mean for it to be a reveal.
Yeah, that's a little strange.
Because
But I do wonder
the
if
movie just can't communicate anything to the audience because it feels like a bunch of scenes pasted together rather than a naturally evolving story. So when Doom proposes to her, she's surprised and it seems sudden, but we, the audience, do not realize that they haven't even been dating. Like, that's important information to have. I'm never with these characters.
Well, like I said at the beginning, like we rush to get their origin out of the way as fast as possible, but then we don't do anything after it's done. Like you could have lived before that as well as just doing anything after that. But
How
you
would
could
you
have had all that set up
how
before
would you
that.
do that structurally, Austin? Like, would you do the thing where you introduce each of them in a separate scene, or would you like pair them off? I mean, I guess it just depends on what story you're telling, of course, but
Yeah, I mean, my dream origin Fantastic Four now is the one where they get their powers, they come back, they're celebrities, and then you have I think what's the villain's name? I think it's like the Red Ghost or something. The guy who makes the Fantastic Four with monkeys, and then he does that because he's like, I'm gonna do what these celebrities were doing. That's what they should have done. We needed monkeys in this movie.
but I guess with just more broadly with like how would you introduce them? Like you don't want it to be like Suicide Squad or something.
No, where it just takes forever. Well, and that introduces them twice. Like you could maybe do that once.
Yeah, that's not inherently wrong or anything.
But
It's just so
introducing Reed
clunky.
and Ben together is fun. You could have paired them off, like where you introduce Reed and Ben together, and then the Storms.
That's what I was thinking. Fan Force
Maybe
does
instead of them
does
going
the flashback
to Doom,
thing.
maybe instead of them going to Doom, you have it be Sue's dad. Whatever his name is, Doctor Storm.
Which Fan Force does.
Hmm.
Somebody was complaining. Oh yeah, Bakura. This is a great comment. He wrote this in that last scene. What the hell are they thinking the FF for? Doom was only a threat to them. Yeah, because it was a stage show. Like everybody else just stood around them in a circle. There was only mild property damage in the crossfire. They didn't save the public here. Yeah, I'm telling you, if you go back and watch the 95 Power Rangers movie and this back to back, they're shockingly similar.
If anything, what the public saw was the Fantastic Four throw a metal man out of their building and then burn him alive on the street.
Yay, thank you, Fantastic. Yeah, if they understand anything, even if they understood anything about the context of what was happening, they should blame the Fantastic Four for like causing this problem in the first place.
There should be people that are like, that metal man was probably right. He was just doing his thing and they lit him on fire.
To that point you made earlier about Ben Grimm and how at the end he just kind of decides to keep being the Thing for no reason. Like you can totally flesh that out and tell that story and like get him to a place where he has the ability to change back if he wants to, but like he's accepted now, or he's able to accomplish things that he couldn't without the rocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it would have been cool for a sequel if you did that, to have him be like a spokesperson or like a guy who does like a self-help group type thing, you know, with other people that are kind of living in hardship or like handicaps.
Oh yeah.
You could have done something cool with that.
Well, and that could be maybe a big motivation for him not to change back.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do that somehow through Alicia. Like you could have her be the catalyst for that, or the conduit.
Yeah, which is why like that's my big like I wish we did this, and it's not like we didn't do movies with two villains, especially at Fox at this point. Like I wish we did more with that and maybe had her father in the second act of this film to bring them together to focus the Fantastic Four aspect and also, you know, give his arc more weight.
Is there another big superhero movie that has this much of just a non-story that like just introduces its characters and then stalls out the whole movie? Like I can't think of another one that's
at the time, or just like including like up to now.
Yeah, because I guess
Because I would say Quantum Mania.
I was going to say the Ant-Man movies have it a little bit, 2 and 3 both.
Yes, mainly 3, I think. I think 3 has it really bad.
Three definitely more so than 2. 2 has the same problem this one does for me, only in that it feels like it starts
Well, 2, I think, because
in
I
kind
agree
of the
with you,
wrong
like,
place.
it
Like,
starts in the wrong place. It's still telling a story. It's just, it feels like the wrong story. Like, it should have went elsewhere with it,
yeah, it's true.
as opposed to this where it has no story. And Quantum Mania is also very much like twiddling its thumbs for like half its runtime.
Oh, and I said this last night, but in case you missed that show, it is ironic that this movie is directed by a
Oh,
man
yes.
named story when it has none.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And
You can't make this stuff up. Oh, and Peyton Reed also almost directed this movie.
and it's a period piece.
Oh,
That's
wow,
what-
I forgot
that's
about
what he
that.
wanted to do with it. Yeah.
I first learned about that in an old Wizard magazine, and it blew my mind. Like, I didn't know that for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. We because there was a lot of talk that like, oh, maybe they'll get him to do the MCU Fantastic Four. He probably really wants to do it.
Yeah, and I was nervous about that because he's not a great director.
Mm-hmm. I did wonder if they would maybe let him introduce them in Ant-Man 3, but obviously we didn't.
Well, and I thought there was a good chance he would get it when Quantumania, when they sold that like it was a huge event movie, and he directed it, and I was like, oh, they're giving him like bigger, more important things, or at least they're pretending like that movie's important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think what happened is that movie didn't perform and then they took it from him. I don't think he was ever on that. But
No, because it was already with John Watts before that.
Was it already with? Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's already dropped out and stuff by the time Ant-Man 3 is coming out.
Well, Austin, let's go ahead and read tweet length reviews before we get to our rating on this, and then we will reveal to ourselves and everybody else what we'll be doing a commentary for in 2 weeks. I've just got to bring up, where did it go?
Where's my wheel?
Sorry, give me just a second. Do you
No
have
worries.
Discord up? You can maybe help me read these.
Oh yeah, where's my phone? Okay, I've got Discord up. What do you want? What do you need me to read?
I just thought maybe we'd go back and forth and read these sweet.
Oh, and I can get,
reviews. We got like 6 of them this time.
Do we have any on Patreon? I can.
No,
open-
we just have the Discord ones.
Oh, okay.
I did not get any response on Patreon, but I had to bring this up on my phone because this is not interesting to anybody but you. But I'm still having that problem on desktop where I'm only getting 1 letter of everybody's names.
Oh, okay.
And so I had to put it up on my phone so I could see who wrote these.
Weird. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. Chewbacca's lover. Not as bad as people say. Still not great. Michael Chiklis kills it as the Thing. He doesn't get enough credit. Doctor Doom sucks. No reason they wouldn't do comic book Doom.
Yeah, I agree with that. Austin, it's frustrating in a thing like this that seems so cornball and so like relentlessly silly that like it's too smart or grounded or whatever to do a more comic book Doom and to like stay away from anything reminiscent of magic or anything. Like that's preposterous.
Yeah, I don't even think you have to go to magic. But there's this weird thing, like I said.
You don't have to, but you could if you wanted to. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be too out of place.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, there's this weird thing where I think they try to make it more realistic with the metal skin idea in both of the released iterations, and it's way less so.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
And then Rise of the Silver Surfer is just as bad about it, or worse, because it goes, this movie is too smart and grounded for a giant purple man. We better just embed him in a cloud.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then that movie is just them hanging out in the woods while Doctor Doom flies around on a surfboard.
I love the woods. Mad Bat 68 has The tone and feeling of what a Fantastic Four film should feel like, but is let down by mediocre writing and an extremely miscast Sue Storm. Inoffensive, but very flawed. Rating, villain. Do you agree with inoffensive, or do you find this movie offensive?
I think it's offensive in how inoffensive it is. Like, it's so nothing that it makes me more mad that it doesn't even attempt to be anything.
It's just a big missed opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you have this, Cap, but I have that sometimes where I almost get more annoyed when it doesn't even bother making me feel either way. It's why I really don't like Shang-Chi, is because it's the paint by numbers Marvel movie.
Yeah, you want to see something take a swing.
Yeah.
And you'd much rather a swing and a miss than a bunt or a ball.
The 2016 Suicide Squad movie is one of the worst superhero films ever made. I still talk about it. There's things to discuss.
Yeah, you'd rather watch that than something like Shang-Chi even, probably, right?
I'd be less bored. Doolittle. This movie reminds me of Stillborn.
Wow, to your point, really.
I'd rather watch something else. Rating supervillain.
That's amazing. We did not read that ahead of time, folks. Tom, while it's definitely a product of its time, it's pretty solid and definitely the best Fantastic Four movie thus far. A solid hero, which is saying nothing, because I think that's true, unless we're counting the '94 movie. Because again, in some ways, I think that still is the best, just because it seems to have reverence for those for that material. It gets the characters better.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely flawed, but it's way better. Of the released movies, yeah, it's probably the best one.
And you know what else is really interesting? Of those early pre-Marvel Studios and Fox and everything Marvel movies, it's the most faithful and most comic booky of those. Like, put that up against I'm talking about '94. Like, put that up against Captain America and Punisher. It's not taking the kinds of liberties those are. It's much more off the page.
Yeah, it's probably that, and then Howard the Duck.
Yeah, that's true.
But even then, like, Fantastic Four is also probably more off the page than that is.
Yeah, and less all over the place.
But I love them both. I don't know if I can say I love the Corman Fantastic Four. I've seen it once. I don't remember it super well, but I love Howard the Duck, and that's all that matters.
Go ahead and read John's, and then we'll do ours.
So Subject 879. It has its moments, but it's let down by some really bad choices. Rating villain.
Bag just put in a $1.99 super chat and threw in his tweet length review, and he says, "I've already forgotten the last 2 hours." Villain.
Yep.
Well, I think people could probably guess what our ratings are going to wind up at, but let's find out. Austin, where do you land on the 5-point rating system?
So mine is going to be on the lower end of hero. It's just not great, but it's pretty high up. No, mine's a supervillain. This movie's awful, and I hate it. This so far, I think, is the worst movie we've done on the Rewind Project.
Is it? I have to go back to the list because we've done 15 of these now.
Yeah, and I keep a list, so like it's easier for me to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is 100% the worst one we've watched so far.
Oh, and I keep meaning to start having an actual ranked list at the end of this, although that would make it even longer. But I do want to start doing that.
Yeah, well, I keep mine, so it would be really easy for me to do.
Yeah, I need to set mine up in the first place, and then because we can't have one list where we together compromise on it. That wouldn't make sense. So we'll have to have two separate ones.
Yeah, you don't want to start it now because I have one and you don't. You want to make it in the moment.
That's true too.
I can send you mine though, so that you can look at it and see what we've done.
I agree with you. Now, if we were just reviewing Fantastic Four movies, or we were just reviewing things like of this ilk, it might go a little higher in Beat a Hero, just comparing apples to apples. But when you're looking at just the whole of, and because it is, as we said, probably the best of the released ones, it's still in the grand scheme a villain for me. And I'm sure that's harsher than however I rated it on the original Rewind, but it's the seams are more than showing. Like, I struggled to find redeeming qualities this time, and I used to enjoy this movie a little bit more than I am now.
Mhm.
But like the relationship drama, which I didn't talk about as much here, because again I've kind of done my bit on that. It really pisses me off like every time. But
Yeah.
but even beyond that, like it's just spinning its wheels so hard. It's dull and unfunny, and
Mhm.
it's the big
It's a chore to sit through.
it is, and the big surprise for me this time around was how dated it felt. Like, this is now one of the most dated superhero movies to me, and like Daredevil is still dated in its way, but I still find some redeeming value in it, and sometimes like that's not a problem. You know, what I mean, sometimes something feels like it's set in its time and place. This is dated in the wrong way. Like, if I guess what I mean is, Daredevil felt like a thing that was of its time and utilized a lot of the sensibilities there, but whether it achieved this or not, maybe wanted to last. This feels really disposable.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like you took Bullseye and the kind of very early 2000s design of him, gave it to Doom, and replaced his personality with like a later Hanna-Barbera villain character where you just have no personality to them.
See, people are comparing me to things I've done before again, and said that I was a lot softer on this and liked it more on the Marvel Mania. As I've always said, I'm reviewing things based on the last time I saw it. And the last time I saw this, and just now sitting through it again, I did not have a good time.
And if I'm running for office on this, I can say I've always been consistent.
And that's why I'm not a politician. Okay, let's go ahead and flip or spin a wheel that we've put together for next time. So we've got several movies that were nominated by Patreon, and if you would like to help us choose movies for commentary here on the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project, patreon.com/geekvolution, and the $5 tier lets you help us pick these things. For the $10 tier, you can become a Superhero Rewind producer and get extra perks even on top of that. But you can help us select stuff at just the $5 tier. So, Austin, I guess I'll read the list before we spin the
Yeah.
wheel. It's an odd list, and as I said, a lot of these are very obscure. But here it is. So we have we've Austin is there, but not me. Okay. We have a movie called Valentine or Valentine, which I think
It's
is
like
kind of
Valentine Dark Avenger, I think is the full title. It's something like that.
it looks like kind of a recent B movie that's a superhero thing. Mask of Zorro, The Crow City of Angels, which I did an unscripted review on a couple years ago. A movie from 1997 called Orgasmo, which apparently was made by the South Park guys.
Hmm.
Jojiro wants us to do a Superman knockoff from the 70s called Puna Man. Jeff Niederhofer asked us to do Adventures of the American Rabbit, which is a movie I own, but I know nothing about. I think it's animated.
I know it's about a rabbit and his adventures.
Lord Gabe asked us to do Holy Musical Batman, which actually I've always wanted to do at least a blind commentary on.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it counted, so I was like, eh.
It doesn't count as a thing we have to do, but I would do it.
Oh, okay.
If somebody requested it, if that makes sense. So like we're trying to do, and we'll never get there probably, but we're of course trying to be completionists and do every superhero movie ever made. We don't have to do that one; it doesn't count for the list, but I would do it. And then Tom wants us to just go ahead and do the unreleased '94 Fantastic Four movie. So that is on this list. So like. Nothing against Tom, but I hope that doesn't come up because it would be weird to do those two next to each other. But it's on here. And then Doolittle wants Days of Future Past, which is very relevant this year because it's its 10th anniversary and because we've got Deadpool 3 coming. And Austin, there's like 4 movies that are super relevant to Deadpool 3. that we could do all or one of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No kidding.
Because this Days of Future Past, it's both the Deadpool movies, because we haven't done a commentary for this project on either of those yet, and Logan. Those are all relevant this year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The two I'm looking forward, or that I'm like rooting for, are Mask of Zorro and Puma Man.
Do you know anything about that?
No, but I want to watch a movie because he said it was starring Donald Pleasance, and I want to see Donald Pleasance and Puma Man.
Oh, is that who it is?
I don't know if he is Puma Man, but he's in it.
Okay, here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and spin the wheel, and we're gonna find out what our fate will decide here, Austin. It was Austin's idea, by the way, to put this on a wheel. I was just gonna have the two of us kind of compromise and pick one, but this might be a way we do this every now and again. Here we go. The wheel is spinning, and it has landed on Days of Future Past.
Ah, there we go.
I'm sorry, Austin.
It's okay. We were so close to Puma Man, and yet so far.
Well, that'll be good for view count anyway. I mean, like, I think people will care more about that one. I mean, obviously, most of these we hope to eventually get to anyway, but you guys are helping us decide the order they happen in.
Yeah, exactly. That is funny that out of like all these obscure movies, the wheel landed on the one that's the most well known.
The most mainstream, yeah. And like, in my defense, I didn't stack the deck on that. I didn't make the wheel land on it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I kind of wanted to do that a little later in the year. That's not even the one I would have picked right away. I was kind of hoping for City of Angels, even though you would have to watch 2 movies because you haven't seen The Crow yet. But
yeah, I don't mind watching The Crow beforehand. So.
Just because I watched that not too long ago, and it's not great, but it's interesting. I don't know. That would have been fun to do with you, but someday.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and there's a Crow reboot coming out this year, so
yeah. So The Crow actually itself I want to do this year, and that'll probably be one that we don't let people pick on. We'll just do it when it's closer. But
yep.
Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. And once again, if you'd like to help support us on Patreon, and thanks to everybody that supported us through Super Chats tonight, and thanks just to regular commenters interacting with us, and thanks just for being here. You guys are wonderful. But you can go to patreon.com/geekvolution, and you can become a Patreon producer at the $10 tier. You can hang out monthly or so with Austin and I talking about superhero movies on Discord. Lots of other perks there. And you can also request a commentary at the $30 tier. You can get any superhero movie that you want pushed all the way to the front of the line, doing it that way. And we don't have any of those at the moment. So if you were to do a request for that soon, you would get it in the next couple of shows. So just throwing that out there. But as always, I want to go through all of the top patrons, and one of the perks that you get at the $10 tier or above is your name read out by me and sometimes Austin. But Austin, I'm not screen sharing this right now. Austin, I'm going to screen share this so you can help me because
okay.
I haven't made you do this with me in a while.
I was going to say it's been a while.
Yeah, so we should do that.
It's been a while.
Can you see that?
Let's see. Let me zoom in. Okie dokie.
Are you gonna
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to start. Here we go.
Okay.
So thanks to all the patrons, but especially Jeff Niederhofer,
Jesse Surtees,
Chewbacca's lover,
Dr. Hello,
Goofster 123,
Hot Soup,
Joe Turner,
Jajira,
John Matthew McLean,
MattBat68,
Michael Martin,
Stone Gasman,
Super Billy,
Adam March.
You skipped Thomas Edgehill.
Oh, sorry, Thomas. You scrolled too fast. I got lost.
Don't blame it on me.
I am blaming it on you.
Adam March.
Thomas Edgehill.
Adam March.
This is a disaster. I'm never going to be allowed to read
it's
again.
It's an absolute disaster. Your line is Damon Begay.
I said it.
Oh, I missed
Damon
it.
Begay.
Jacob Snyder.
John Sandoval.
Jonathan Campbell.
Kareem Roberts.
Matthew Brody.
Michael Austin Gulick.
Subject 879.
Wait, why is John on there twice?
I don't know that.
I should tell him that he's paying double.
You should tell him. No, don't tell him that. Don't tell him.
Istanbul was John Sandinovel.
John, I'd like to thank both you and Subject 879.
Me.
Unknown passenger.
Wendell Jones.
And that's everybody. Thanks a lot, folks, for being patrons. I hope it was
Especially John.
I hope it was worth the train wreck.
Oh, what a disaster. I'm sweating.
I really enjoyed them.
Thank you. You love to watch me fail.
I will not confirm or deny this. Anyway, thanks a lot for being here, everybody. We will see you again in 2 weeks. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
See ya, everybody.
Appreciate you guys. Bye, folks.